Hey, what's up? Today I wanted to go over my one-page worth of thoughts on the Minifreak by Arturia because I think it's a very interesting synthesizer and it might be a good fit for a lot of you. I also wanted to cover some of the patches that I've made exploring this synthesizer over the past couple days, and no, this video is not sponsored by Arturia. They did, however, send this to me to check out ages ago, but there was no agreement on doing a video or anything like that. Plus, I've just been so busy preparing for the live set that I haven't had time to check this out until now, which, by the way, if you're in LA on January 26th, check the link down below to come see me play. It's a free event. Okay, so let's start with what I didn't like, because that list is extremely short. Basically, one, I wish it had more envelopes. Sure, you have the regular amp envelope here, which is normaled to the analog filter, but if you've been around the studio with me for a while, you'll know that I love having a separate envelope for my filter, a separate envelope for my amp or my amplifier, right? And a third envelope for modulation. What I wish Arturia would have done is made this cycling envelope normaled to the filter. At the end of the day, the synth is $5.99 and you can't really ask for the world. Speaking of $5.99, you get what you pay for physically, right? Mini keys, small screen, okay-ish knobs, and a metal enclosure, which is nice, and it's also heavy AF, by the way. But for $5.99, the sound you can get out of this thing is crazy good. And I guess that kind of wraps up the what I didn't like about this synth, because yeah, that's kind of it. I just wish I had one more envelope. I guess I can mention other things, right? Like the touch interface is a little weird, the styling, the mini keys, but whatever, that's stuff you kind of get used to and it won't take people off the dance floor anyway. All right, now on to what I do like about this. 9 assignable mod destinations. You get 3 pages of these that you can do whatever you want. This is super powerful, and if you were to max this out, you'd probably have some very unusable sounds because things would be flying all over the place. Next to that, you get a ton of effects and different types of those effects. It's not just chorus, it's lush chorus or dark chorus or shaded chorus. These selectable styles are on most of the effects, which really opens up like the sound that you can get out of this thing. Speaking of sounds, oscillators, yes, they are digital, but you have a ton to select from with options from mutable instruments and some of my favorite people, noise engineering. This is great because I've been an advocate of getting creative and unique oscillators, right? The core of your sound, even if they're digital, and then warming them up later with an analog filter, which this has, by the way. What's also cool is that with the oscillators, oscillator 2 actually has this type that has a phase filter, a comb filter, surgeon filter, and a multi-filter. These process the signal of oscillator 1 before it reaches the rest of the signal path. For example, check out this patch. If I go to oscillator 2, it's set to a comb filter, which I can further adjust. And then with your volume, it's actually a dry wet of oscillator 1 without going through that filter, or oscillator 1 going fully through it. And you can mix this as well. So without that, and with it, right, I turned a ton of dampening on there, but you get the idea. I just love that texture without it. With it. Yo, that like glassiness, I love that. Now, before we dive into some other patches and I get carried away, the last 2 things I wanted to mention really quick were that it's easy to navigate because the synth is pretty simple in terms of envelope and LFO choices. Nothing really feels too divey, so it's a good thing, right? And if you wanted to, you can dive a little deeper using the sound edit button here. So you can kind of apply some of those more nerdy parameters like LFO trig styles, or turn on trig reset for your envelopes, and I don't know, there's a bunch of other random things in here. Also, lastly, the software is actually kind of dope. It lets you see all the wave shapes and how they're moving around and what's doing what and like how it's affecting it all. I wish that this was visible on the synth itself, but it isn't. Once you select an effect or an oscillator, it just plays an animation, then it disappears forever, or at least until you select a different effect or oscillator. Like, for example, if I go to flanger, whoa, dude, that looks super trippy. Or you go to delay, wow, but then that's it. You never see it again. And same with types. You can choose this frog. I wish I could see the frog exploding. I mean, we're so close, right? The noise engineer ones are pretty cool, minus the this one that'll give you a seizure. Careful, I should have put a warning. Chords one, you know, it's cool, but you can't really see anything else once it goes away. But on the software, it shows you at least the wave shape and how it's moving, which is really dope. Okay, so let's hear a couple more presets. If we go to RT Dustpad, this is one that I made here. You can hear this like weird little wispy sound. There it is. What's happening here is that I have LFO2 going to assign 1, which I've set to time 2. So this sounds kind of nuts, but basically on effect number 2, it's a bit crusher. Time is affecting our decimate parameter. But it's just ever so slightly. Oh, another thing I wish this had is that it would show you the saved value of what your knob was saved at, if that makes sense. So like if I move this, I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Let me go back to my preset. I don't know where my preset was saved at. So what I end up doing instead is going forward and then back and reloading that. But what's cool is effect 2, if I turn up time, kind of gives it that aliasy sound. And speaking of those effect types, if I hold down shift and turn this, we can change it from a bit crusher to an absolutely nothing. I guess the bit crusher only has one effect. So like I mentioned, they're not on all effects, but if this was like a distortion, you have classic, soft clip, germanium, what the, whatever, and then bit crush. All right, next patch. This is called the Nora pad. Honestly, this one's pretty straightforward. If we really want to dive a little deeper into it, we'll look at assign 3. The assigns, I'm just going straight for those because those are usually what I end up having assigned to something kind of unique. You can see where everything else is kind of going, right? Wave 1, timbre 1, cutoff. Wave 1, timbre 1, those are oscillator 1. Pitch 1, 2, pitch for 1 and 2. Cutoff, there's only one filter on here. Of course, it's poly because of the structure of it, 6 voices. But if I look at assign, it'll say shape 2, which means the shape of oscillator 2. And if we look at oscillator 2, it's noise. It's that whoosh, whoosh. And what's being assigned to it? It's LFO2. So if I go over here, select that, we can see how much. Super subtle. I'm all about the super duper subtle modulations, because if this was a lot more, it really kind of just changes the texture of it. Again, don't know what it was assigned at originally, but we'll just say 8. And another good thing about the Minifreak is it actually has chord memory. So I just had a chord saved, and that chord actually got saved to the preset. Right, or if you say chord, that'll get saved to the preset. Next patch, stellar chords. This one's probably one of my favorites. You'll see that chord isn't enabled, but listen to this. If you hear a little bit of clipping, that's because there's clipping in this patch. So how are we making a chord? Again, oscillator 2 is where the magic happens. If we go to type, it's set to chords, and chords allows you to choose what type of chord, the interval. Right? So say we're on major 9th, then you have timbre, kind of like the transpose or the inversion. And then the waveform. As you can hear, I have a ton of reverb on here. We'll turn that off. In oscillator 1, we'll turn that off as well. And again, we'll set this back to minor 7th, which is what I originally had it saved to. Shape. Oh, and then oscillator 1, that's kind of doing some wild style stuff in here, right? If we listen to just oscillator 1 by itself, we'll turn down the volume of oscillator 2. That's oscillator 1 there. That's it, super duper quiet. I have it way down. We look at our assigns, it's going to change the shape of oscillator 2. And oscillator 2's shape was changing the wave shape, so it's giving it a bit of that wham, kind of, almost sounds like a filter kind of closing, but it's really just interpolating the wave shapes. I do the same thing on the model cycles or the Syntac a ton. Assign 2, it's going to be the pitch for oscillator 1, which is making it go bip, boop, bip, boop, bip, boop, right? This one was a little tricky because I had to tune oscillator 1 a specific amount and then bring the modulation amount itself to 6. And watch, I'll bring up oscillator 2 right now, and then I'll change this. See, it can sound really bad, but you got to find that musical-ish point, which was 6 for me. Actually, you know what? This is a perfect time to try this one thing out. If we go into sound edit and we go to pitch, oscillator 1 mod, continuous or chromatic. Let's try this. Yo, this is nuts. So what I was just able to do is anything that is modulating the pitch of oscillator 1 or 2 can actually quantize the pitch to either semitones or octaves. That way it's not this crazy free-flowing thing. So now the pitch is actually moving in semitones, or I can have it move in octaves. But I didn't set this up that way. I kind of just did it by ear, as I've been doing on a lot of my other synths that don't have that. But that's kind of cool that it allows you to get more musical outcomes, I guess, that kind of stay within a key or a range of actual notes according to the Western scale. Where am I going with this? Anyway, next patch. This is the fall shape. So reason it's called fall shape is because we're going to play with the fall. In true fashion, the way I like to make my patches, I like taking oscillator 2's pitch and pushing it into the current pitch. But I still leave a little bit of that vintagey, warbly vibe in there, right? So right, you get what I'm saying, where I'm pushing the pitch into unison with the other oscillator. I feel like I'm making up words at this point. Basically, I figured this out when I was using the OBX8. In this video here, I recreated it on Peak, and just to kind of prove a point, I recreated it on the Minifreak because I think it sounds really cool. So if you're interested, like I said, check out that video. And this one sounds great if you just turn the filter down a little bit. Get a little bit of that sizzle. I'll be honest, I've never been the biggest fan of Arturia's filter types. I forget what it was called. It's the Steiner Parker. Had to look it up. Never the biggest fan of it. It's cool. I don't think this is a Steiner Parker. I could be wrong, but either way, it does the job. It's good. It's good enough, right? Plus, again, like I mentioned earlier, oscillator 2 has all those different filter types. You can push this pretty far. Next patch is going to be called DAT bass. I just wanted to make a big, warm, kind of analog-y sounding bass to see if I can push it there. Totally can. I mean, super good. If we were to listen to this, it's just oscillator 1. Oscillator 2 is not doing anything. Virtual analog, which I believe are from Braids, the Mutable Instruments module. Listen to our timbre. Just gave it a little sizzle. Shape. And then wave is going to change your detuning of the second oscillator within this one oscillator, if that makes sense. There's two oscillators in the virtual analog oscillator, which is on one. So resetting that patch. Again, I wanted to have a little bit of a pop there, so we have this, our cycling envelope. Going to the filter cutoff, you can see that in here. Cutoff, cycle envelope, you select it just by 40.9. Nothing too specific. So this patch was the one that we heard a second ago, right? I just love the way this sounds. If we go to our effects, I of course have a chorus, which is off, going into a phaser, which is on. We turn that off. Right, and then we go to our reverb, turn that off. So it still sounds kind of trippy, right? That's because oscillator 2 is set to that comb filter, putting it in that filter mode. If we look at a sine 1, it's going to wave 2's, which is the comb filter's wave, which, if we go and look at the wave, it's going to be our cutoff for the comb filter. Right, but how much? Let's see. We select this by 0.2. Subtlety is key. Turn this up too much, I'm going to throw up everywhere. Turn it down a little bit. Just movement, just tiny little kiss. Listen to that. Oh man, that sounds so sick. Let's turn up the... And then again, this is without the effects, right? We turn those on. Oh man, the phaser killed this. I need to save it without the phaser. I mean, to go from that other patch to this patch to the other patches that are on here, which by the way are awesome. If you're just buying something to look for like a preset machine, it's a great option to that. But I mean, the flexibility of this synth is truly impressive. It sounds like I wrote that line. And then lastly, wavy surf. I'm kind of working on this one still. Right, I kind of wanted that twangy tremolo vibe slash, you know, seaside. I don't know what seaside we're at, but it sounds like I'm about to get, I don't know, shoved into the trunk of a car or something. But yeah, that's kind of it. I just wanted to express my thoughts on it. I think it's a really cool synthesizer for the price. Some things can be improved. If this was like, you know, you saved up all your money and you had to buy one synthesizer, this wouldn't be a bad option because it has a lot of room. I mean, not to mention the sequencer is pretty good, right? If you go and you record, or you can just like put a couple steps in here. I don't know how to turn the metronome on. I don't even think there is one. But say you do that, and then we just say, oh right, hit record first. Right, and then you go to last step, go here, then dun 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 dun. Pretty straightforward, right? You do get a couple other little things here like randomizing. A lot of this kind of works for your arpeggiator as well. So like if we go to the arpeggiator here, how many octaves? the way it goes, up and down and up, randomize, is it a chord, is it poly? So it can get pretty deep. Me personally, I don't really like sequencers on keyboards like this. I mean, the Pro 3 one's okay, but I would much rather sequence this with something else. But again, if this is all you got, it is more than enough to make a bunch of tracks. All right, I'll leave it at that. Yeah, that's kind of my quick little brain dump on this thing. If you enjoyed this video and kind of sound design, I think this is another video you would enjoy. And until next week, my friend, it's always good to see you. You already know the drill. Share the love, share the knowledge. Knowledge is power. Peace. Let's see what drums I got on this Syntac. That'll work. Yes, the blessing of simple drums works with everything.